Now, hi guys, we are back and live here with the PDOCS Livestream Series. We've been on a break for a couple of weeks just because some of you guys know that we ran the Sales Lab annual masterclass a week ago Wednesday. So there was a lot of prep and that was a big thorough masterclass where these are more back and forth interviews or very individual lessons. So that was kind of specialized and took a lot of time and effort. And yeah, so that was great. If you guys didn't get that yet, just comment down below and we'll send you over that replay. But first and foremost, we're here with our first guest since our little couple of week break and a good friend of mine and somebody that we both kind of seen each other's trajectory in this business. We both kind of, I think, stumbled across each other very early on in our entrepreneurial journeys. So it's kind of cool to reconnect with people that are friends and that have become successful, but people that we've kind of seen their whole trajectory and neither of us did this overnight. And then some people, it might look like that. Hey, last year you weren't doing now and nothing, and now you're doing this. And I guarantee it wasn't like that for either of us. But for those who stay to the end or want it, or if you're watching, on Facebook or on the replay or YouTube or wherever I'm posting this, you can comment below and I will get this sent over. Or if it's on YouTube, it'll probably be right there in the description. But Richard has a great little training. And actually, you describe it really quick, Richard. I know the title, but just describe, is it a PDF? Is it a document?
Yeah, no. It's a training that I did with a mentor and a dear friend and spiritual teacher, Tyson Sharp, on how to master your emotions. That makes you a better leader in your relationship, ultimately.
Great. And that's what we're going to be talking about a lot today. Richard is a relationship coach, a, spiritual and more masculine healer. Works with a lot of dads, husbands, high performing male entrepreneurs. And as I said in my post, it's funny because I've been following you and I see your content. And it seems like a lot of time women are your biggest fans with your content, probably what you do in their relationships. You work a lot more with the male perhaps, but you change it for them and they really see it, right? That's the thing with us men. We don't always see the emotional side or what they're feeling because we don't really interpret it. We're such physical beings and things like that. So we're going to dive into a lot of that. But the overarching topic we're going to dive into is kind of how to get your balls back, both at home and how that kind of correlates to business, a lot of this stuff. And Richard and I will share. But why don't you start off with a little of your background, what you do, how long you've been doing it, and how we came connected. And then we'll dive into what we want to discuss.
Yeah, I'm known for being brief and concise, right? So this should be...
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, this should be easy. First of all, man, I love what you said about we've been supporting each other for years. You know what I mean? Like we've been in each other's sphere, and I have absolutely seen you. I remember the conversations that we had 4 years ago, right? What the fuck, Richard? This sucks. And I'm like, dude, this sucks. Fuck this, right? And it's like, hey man, listen, I just closed a $20 million deal. How you doing? I'm like, well, I helped someone not kill themselves because they didn't get divorced. How you do? High fives up top, right? So just shout out to us, man. Shout out to consistency. Shout out to just believing in oneself and, really pursuing our dreams. I'm proud of us. Shit.
Thank you. Likewise. Yeah, I'm definitely proud of you. And I don't admit it about myself as much, but I definitely am.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think that's a really good topic that I'm probably going to talk about in this call too. But ultimately, my name is Richard Earl Lonsbury. The Earl is silent, and I'm like Ray said, I'm a men's relationship coach. I work primarily with the LinkedIn version is I help high performing husbands revive their sex lives in 30 days or less. The human being version is just I help financially stable dads get laid so they don't get divorced and then die in a hotel eating, from heroin overdose. You know what I mean? So that's essentially what it is that I do. I'm a very, very big fan of men, masculinity. I'm a very big fan of healing, leadership. And over the course of my experience in relationship and business, I have 4 kids. They feel like 400 kids. I have 1 woman. She feels like 400 women. And
that might be personalities, Richard.
And I can tell you that, we've been through a roller coaster, right? We've lost everything. We lost our home. We lost our custody of our children. We lost each other. And then we got it all back. And the one thing that I can say through our journey is that if a man is not leading first himself and second his home, right? Third, whatever he creates, his creations. And then he is the passenger in his own life. And that's a very disempowering place to be. And it was a very disempowering place for me, right? God damn it, I'm rhyming now. But you know, you only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. But
Dr. Seuss.
there's going to be a lot of jokes. Just I'm sorry, but
Dr. Seuss mixed with Eminem there. You got the rhyming and then the rapping.
I'm sure I have. All of these are Dr. Seuss books, by the way. Don't let the bookshelf fool you. But I will say that it is true. Like if you're in the passenger seat, it's a very disempowering place to be, and it can very much feel like we're victims of life. That life is happening to us. And then we just react, right? We just react to whatever it is that comes our way, and then we try to numb that pain because we were not trained or taught as men. A lot of us weren't how to feel life. We weren't taught how to feel our feelings, our emotions. And as a result, what do we often tend to do? We tend to hide in achievement. That's where a lot of high performance comes from, right? It comes from that chip on your shoulder of, I'll show you, dad, right?
Yep.
Or a woman breaks our heart and we're like, man, fuck this bitch. I'm going to go become a millionaire and just like try and fill this hole in our soul. We try to numb it out with drugs. We try to numb it out with alcohol, with other women, with the approval of the feminine, right? And with any kind of external validation. So I've seen over the course of my career, there's a lot of men who are disconnected from their soul. And when you reconnect to your soul, you're actually reconnecting with something that's very universal, very primal, ancestral, your masculine energy, your masculine instincts, the thing that gets you to feel like a man, like the driver of your car, the car of your life, right? And the road that you're on is one that is purpose driven. And so how much more attractive do you think that you would be, not only to your prospects, but to your woman, right? How much more would your kids want to be you when they grow up? When you are the driver of your car on a road that is purpose driven to something that just fires you up day in and day out, regardless of circumstance. So that's something I'm very passionate about. I've been on all spectrums, right? Or I've been on all spokes of the wheel, if you will. Like I've failed miserably. I've been homeless. I have crawled my way out of that. I've learned how to sell, to market, to create from desperation. And I've learned how to create from inspiration. And I can say that the number one factor of all those things, I'm going to pinch it off here, is masculine leadership for men, specifically for the men that are watching this, right? Anybody can lead. Like women can take over the world and own corporations and do 6 and 7, 8, 9 figures. Ariana Huffington is a total badass, right? Go girl. You know what I mean? Like that's not what this is about. People like to jump straight to this because whenever you hear pro-masculine content, right? Or vernacular, there's an immediate dichotomy of like, well, the women can, yes, of course. Yeah. But what we're talking about is the masculine energy within the life of a man, within the context of a man and what he is creating. So that's what I want to say. Masculine leadership can change your freaking life, and it's what makes life worth living. It makes business way more fun, and it makes your relationships way more enjoyable.
This is such a cool conversation and topic because normally I come on here and I'm talking marketing or AI or sales, and still everything I always talk about comes back to personal relationships. And one of the correlations I've really found, in terms of like business and relationships, is once you have confidence, you really can't be stopped in either, right? Like you start to know your own worth and standards and things like that, as well as having the different experiences like you talked about on that wheel of the spectrum. Maybe have gone through some type of alcohol or drug abuse when you went through a bad breakup or a bad thing, right? Like if you haven't been there, although you could, take all the courses and get all the certifications, it's much harder to lead people through experiences that you've never had either, and I think that's similar. And the other aspect is like communication, right? Once I figured out like human psychology and communication really well. And everybody watching probably knows I do a lot of outreach and it's kind of one of my jams. Now, like I'll be talking to somebody. I'm like, yeah, I'm talking to this girl in the DMs. She's like, you get her number? I'm like, dude, I got her in the DMs. Of course I did. Like I always convert. Like that's just my confidence now. And you know what I mean? It just,
I'm taking that. I always convert.
Yeah, I think women feel the same way. Like if I can lead a prospect to where I want them, I feel the same way. I'm doing it for a different reason, right? But you know what I mean? It's the same. The confidence certainly makes me feel like even if I get rejected, oh well, like then I'm that one closer to the yes. You know what I mean? So I think it's fun how all that correlates. And just with what you just went through, I wrote down all these notes about things to bring up and talk about. So we would already be going over the time if I do all that. So let's stick to what I want, because why we do these live streams is so you guys can take away things that you can implement. This will be a little different. This isn't going to be a training where you go watch a tutorial and go plug it into your Facebook campaign or your email campaign. But these are things you can implement, because you said something really good about A, lead yourself, but B, your own house. Like, have your house in order before you try to fix the world or other people's problems.
Yeah.
And those are the things I think we should start with in terms of like, how do you lead, how is good masculine leadership obtained from somebody that doesn't have the experience or the confidence yet? Where would somebody start?
God damn it. That's a great question.
I got to be difficult.
Yeah, man.
I'm not letting you cop out. You can think, but I'm not letting you cop out of this one.
No. I'm just passing out.
Oh, okay. Well, that's allowed on this show.
And my blood sugar, I just whatever. No, but I'm reminded of one thing. One of my mentors, Bradley Grinnan, shout out to Coach Lunch. He said, everything in your life starts with a decision, even if it's a decision by default. So
that's impactful right there.
Oh my gosh. Everything in your life is starts with a decision, even if it's a decision by default. And what Carl Jung said was, or I believe he said this, was what you are aware of, you control. What you are unaware of controls you. So at some point, you have to be able to open your freaking eyes and look around and then decide, very, very simple question, is this who I choose to be? If not, you are at cause, right? You're not the effect of your life. You are the cause of it. That is not to invalidate your own circumstances and experiences, because those are valid. But like I like to tell all of my clients, your pain is valid. It's not unique. What guy here hasn't had trouble with their girlfriend, with their wife? What guy here hasn't also needed more money? You know what I mean? It's like your pain is valid, but it's not unique. And here's the thing. If one man can, so too can another. So whatever it is that you're facing, if it's a leadership problem, if it is, I don't feel like the driver of the car of my life, I feel like a passenger. Cool. Let's start with admitting that, right? Let's start with accepting that. And let's start with going within. Because if you don't go within, you end up going without. Everybody thinks that, we're in it. We are in an advice oriented society. You go on YouTube, there's how to do this, how to do that, right? I would argue that all of the answers lie within. And that's not just an esoteric thing. That's not just the woo-woo thing. When you actually think about the ramifications of the subconscious mind and all the billions of bits of data that it takes in per second, is it not then possible, right, that over the course of your life, your subconscious mind has been exposed to the very answer to whatever the fuck it is that you're facing?
Probably more than possible. It's probably likely.
You know what I mean? And then if you take in the woo-woo side, then your subconscious mind is connected to God. It's connected to the energy of the universe. And the energy of the universe is, there's an intelligence to it. I'm getting hyped because I fucking love this stuff. But
I know you do. That's why I'm asking.
There's an intelligence to the universe that is beyond that of the brain. Okay? Beyond the mind, right? Like it says in AA, your best thinking got you here, right? So if you want to be the captain of your ship, you want to be the one driving the car, then it starts with taking responsibility with where you are. God damn, I'm rhyming out. Dude, so many bars, man. It's insane. I'm rhyming way too much for this thing. This is supposed to be professional. Fuck! But that's it.
No, it's not.
Right? If you want to drive the car, take ownership of where you are.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing you said there is how many people look in the mirror and are dead honest with themselves when they're at a crossroads or a troubled time in their lives and ask, is this who I choose to be? And if you can do that and give yourself a solid answer, you can know that I need to start doing things to better myself. You don't just say it, it starts by action. And what he talked about, like what Richard was talking about at the beginning in terms of like him and I, like it wasn't overnight. There was times it sucked, but it was consistency. It was implementation. It was, taking every failure as a lesson forward. And you do that with yourself and you get 1% better every day. That's what it's all about. So
I want to say
spot on
something
with that.
too.
Yeah.
Like, if we're talking about the context of some poor bastard who's ready to take the reins of his life, right? Plato said the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of questions that you ask yourself. And like you said, this isn't going to be a training where we're just going to implement that immediately. This is about going within. This is about asking yourself really tough questions, getting drop dead ass naked, looking in the mirror and be like, am I happy with what I see? Do I approve of what I see? And is this an accurate reflection of the person that I want to be in the world, of the man that I want to be in the world? One of the questions that men rarely ask, they ask where the hoe's at. They ask where the money is, right? They ask where is the solution to my pain. They don't ever ask who am I? And who do I want to be? When you start with those questions, because that forces you to answer them. Because now, if you don't answer them, then you're choosing to be a passenger.
100%.
Okay, that's important. You're choosing to be a
100%.
passenger versus the driver, because now the answer is in the fucking question.
And if you ask, you can actually hold yourself accountable, which you can't do if you don't, seriously ask yourself those questions.
Yeah.
You said something to me the other day that I think I mentioned in that little video I took. And this time, no, there's no supersonic jets taking off in the background. So
damn it, there's just books and fucking headphones.
And Eric Draven from The Crow. Yeah, but you had mentioned something to me the other day that's obvious, but I thought about it a little differently when you said it. You're like, I typically work with men who have just, their relationship just fall apart or it's right about to fall apart, right? And I started thinking to myself, I'm like, imagine if people knew this stuff like before they got to that stage, right? And I don't think necessarily like relationship difficulties ever get kind of, prefaced before that, right? Like, I don't think, like people will, avoid all kinds of things when it comes to different aspects of their life, but they don't really prep for something and they don't realize it until it's happening. And you still save a majority, if not, all those relationships that I hear your clients talk about. But what I'd like to know is, I know I'm guessing each one of these is going to be different, but out of the last 5 or 10 men you've worked with, how long on average working with you before they see a big improvement in their relationship? Whether that's for the guy just wanting to get, his wife back sexually active, whether it's about going out on dates and getting back to a routine that a couple should be doing, like, roughly how long is that transformation? At least I know it never ends, right? But when do you start to see the results?
That's a great question. So I wish there was a one size fits all thing, because that would be good for marketing. But the truth of the matter is that the longest one I had was a year. The shortest I've had was a week.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing. We're not dealing in a linear equation. We're dealing in something that's way bigger and more powerful than that. We're dealing in the realm of quantum physics, right? We're talking about energy. We're talking about feelings, thoughts, belief systems. How you know this because you've seen it. Like, you have someone who you enroll somebody, right? A newbie. And if you were to tell them to run through a brick wall, and they will, right?
Probably.
You say, hey, all right, let's start your Facebook group. Let's start filling it up with your ideal prospects.
And jump
let's
off
start
a brick.
giving them value. Boom. How fast are they going to enroll a client? So now what happens when you have a dude who takes complete and total responsibility for his life? He's willing to let go of the past. He's willing to let go of who he's been and all of his own resentments, right? And then he ends up showing up that day ruthlessly authentic, with purpose, passion, power, drive, direction, intentionality. What is most likely, right? I remember I had a dude that I worked with for about a year, and towards about the halfway point, he was at the fuck this shit, right? Like, understandably so. But he was at the fuck this shit. She's not this, da 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 da. I'm gonna cut the cord. And I asked him, okay, what have you learned from the last 6 months? He's like, how to be the best man that I can possibly be, right? Cool. Got it. How consistent have you been that guy over the last 6 months? It's like I've had really good, weeks, right? I've had 2 weeks on, 1 week off, this, that, and the third. Have you done that for 90 days straight? No. So why are you thinking about pulling the plug? So that's part of it, right? It's not about learning more. We're at a plethora of information. It's about not unlearning, but it's about letting go. There are things that no longer serve us. And there's an internal world here that when we engage it, when we become aware, right? We turn the fucking lights on. Like, okay, what do I actually believe about relationship? Who gave me those beliefs? What do I believe about my wife, right? Because I had a dude who was like, my wife is the devil. Okay, well, how you want to fuck the devil? I don't know what to tell you, dude. You know what I mean? Like what? Like how hot does the devil have to be? You know what I'm saying? So,
Lord.
when we really take a moment to step back and take responsibility for how we are truly showing up in our beingness, not our doing, not just our actions, but the energy that informs our actions, our beliefs, because beliefs inform behaviors. Okay. If I don't know what those are, right? Of course, I'm going to be spinning my wheels and I'm going to trudge. And then I'm going to try and find some 20-year-old asshole on YouTube be like, just be more alpha, bro. Okay, let me go home and just try being more alpha, right? You don't know what the fuck that means, let alone you don't have the internal resilience, right? And
Or
the
belief.
conviction,
Yeah.
the belief to uphold. Let's say you set a boundary, and I'm gonna move on from this, but let's say that you know that boundary setting is good. Your wife is constantly disrespecting you. She's telling you what to do. She's mothering the shit out of you. You set a boundary. You're like, you try valiantly, right? Hey, maybe you shouldn't talk to me like that, right? Okay. And then she steamrolls you because you don't know what the next step is. That's where coaching and consulting come in. That's where I come in. That's where you come in, right? That's where expertise also comes in. But if your belief is, okay, I'm gonna try, and then if she pushes back, I believe myself to be a pussy. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna cave, and then I'm gonna get resentful, and then I'm gonna cheat, and then I'm gonna go back into porn, and I'm gonna masturbate to Sydney Sweeney, right? And I'm gonna do all these other things, okay? Because I don't know what the fuck is going on in here and in here.
And in addition to all that, she's not respecting you at all when you're a pushover and caving.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's tough. So obviously a lot of what you do and what we're talking about here today, masculine leadership. Talk about that. Actually, you've talked about it. What I want you to do actually really simply, how do you define that? So I just want everybody to be clear on what that means, because I think there's a lot of
I
think
love
it's
it.
kind of
No,
an open
yeah, you're absolutely
interpretation.
right. So
I think you and I define it similarly, but I'm curious.
to make it as easy as humanly possible and as digestible as humanly possible, let's just talk about masculine, okay? The energy of that, right? When you think about that word, you tell me what are some words, some traits that pop up?
Strong, protective, producer, providing, if that's, provider, again, just leading. I don't know if I said that, but just like leading and making decisions,
Grounded.
decisiveness, and I already said strong. Yeah, grounded. There you go. That's a good one.
Grounded.
I also think of somebody
Present.
that's confident.
Confident, present.
Present. I don't even think of that one, but that's a good one. And I think that's an overlooked one, maybe.
Abundant. Detached. Right? Unconditional. The masculine needs nothing. John Wineland has a beautiful book, From the Core, and in that he talks about how the masculine, the energy, it doesn't need anything. Because when you're at your best, when you're at flow state, right, or when you're on a sales call and you could give a shit if they move forward, you just know that this is the right thing for them. Like, hey man,
That's it, yeah.
here's the thing. You know what I mean? I could give a shit. I'm gonna be fine. There's a billion of you. There's only one PDOCS. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So and you're still doing it in service of him or her.
Yeah, but that detachment from the outcome.
I'm chill. So we have that energy. Okay. What's leadership?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Leadership is the ability to move forward on your own convictions, actions, morals, and values, with really no thought of what others think, while also showing others, how to get there and leading a path.
Yeah. It is taking responsibility for the outcomes of your life and what you want to create.
Big part of
I need a vision. I need SOPs,
it.
right?
In
I
everything,
need,
really, when you
I
think about
need,
it.
right? I need people, I need buy-in from others. All right. I do need external support. I need conviction, belief. What happens when you pair those two energies? Now you have a man who's grounded, strong, present, right? Convicted, compassionate, centered, unconditionally loving. And then you have him responsible for all
Which
the
all leads
outcomes.
to unstoppable.
Boom.
And that's kind of where the byproduct would lead. What you do in people's relationships and helping them internally heal, take accountability, better themselves, become better leaders. As a byproduct, that all transitions into how they deal with business, work, things like that, right? Because I know you're not by any means a business coach, but I know from some of your clients I've seen, talked to, seen on testimonials, hey, Richard, and I see all the ones about like, dude, she dropped her panties tonight so quick. That hasn't happened in 2.5 years, right? Like those things.
Yeah.
But then also people saying, hey, Richard, as a byproduct of that, I'm now making an extra 25 grand a year because I got promoted or this or that, right? So like and that was a perfect segue, but is there any more you want to talk about that correlation to byproduct between like leading your home and then also your business or your professional life?
You know what? I love that you use the magic word byproduct, because this isn't something that you try to do. This is something that you be, right? And that's very nuanced, and it's very advanced, if you will, right? If we're talking about energetics, but the truth is when you do something, right, you're trying. Let me try to make money. Let me try to be abundant. Let me try to be attractive.
Yeah.
How does that feel? There's an attachment to an outcome. When you're being something, you're like, I just am that thing. I'm prospecting just because I am a business owner, right? The identity informs the action. I'm going to play with my woman. I'm going to flirt with her. I'm going to pursue. And I'm also going to set boundaries and stand up for myself because that's who I am. That's not because I'm trying to do the thing, right? So there's a very interesting distinction between doing and being, especially with that. When you're being, everything else does become a byproduct. When you do business from this full cup, right? And that's part of what these clients were talking about. I had a guy who jumped from 16K per month to 40K per month, right? I didn't help him with that. I don't know shit about business. I'm just really good at helping guys feel things. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I need your help, right? To be able to move forward with this stuff. But ultimately, like what happens when you show up in integrity with this confidence that you're talking about and the clarity of vision? The byproduct is success in
Yeah.
all areas.
And that it comes down to I phrase it pretty much exactly what you said, giving with no expectation of return, whether that's on a sales call with a prospect, in your relationship, in when you're first. So I have a cool screenshot just to show you something you didn't know about. This just happened 2 or 3 days ago with this new girl I'm kind of seeing and talking to. And I think it's that no expectation. Right when you talked about that, I was like, dude, like that text message I got. So I just went in and did this really quickly while you were talking about it. But if you can see in the highlighted area, and I'll read it real quick. It just says, really, well, it should go without saying, but I would love to see you. And that was her. I mean, that was because I was like, oh, yeah, it doesn't really matter to me. I'll be around, but like if we catch up, whatever, right? And then like it should go without saying. I'm like, well, I didn't really know that. I've seen you once or twice, like a couple dates, right? So far. So but that's what you're talking about there. When like, when you have no expectation, they're like, well, it should go without saying, like, you know what I mean? And same thing. That's what I get, that same kind of vibe. Like I know what I'm doing when I'm in a conversation, whether it's a new prospect, a new dating potential, right? Or as it goes more serious, you learn how the more connected communication becomes, right? Because you're not super connected with anybody in 1, 2, 3 dates. I hope not, right? If you are, you're one of those stage 3 clingers that's chasing the opposite sex away, no matter which one you are, I swear. Because I talk to women and men both that have those clingy ones, or those ones you go on 2 dates and they start scrolling through your phone, tell you what pictures you need to keep or not. It's like, okay, just met you a week and a half ago, right? Like, giant red flag. But Yeah, so no expectation of return. One thing I want to touch on and get your take on, and I think a lot of men, this maybe, and I'm guessing like the younger age men that you work with, I don't know how young you work with, but I'm guessing those ones have more trouble like being and understanding what masculinity is because of modern feminism is kind of conditioning men to think that they're supposed to take a back seat and just always placate, right? So like
Yeah.
how is that balance? And is there a difference in like age gaps? Because I don't work in the relationship field, but I'm just
Yeah.
judging what I see in society.
No, great question. So most of the guys that I work with are mid 30s to early 60s.
Yeah, so most of
Right?
them lived in an era
Yeah.
before social media.
So, the tail end of millennials, right? And then the generation before that, I think. I don't know. I don't do math. But it's the older crowd, right?
Yeah,
It's the guys who are close in the middle age area.
the boomers.
And um everybody, I feel, everybody suffers when they feel disconnected to something natural. So let's just start there. Everybody suffers when they're disconnected to something that is natural, especially within themselves. I spent my whole life not feeling like a man because I had no idea what that was or what it meant.
Mm.
And I act dumb, but I'm a pretty smart cookie. You know what I mean? And so when you think about like the idea that masculinity is toxic, let's start with that idea, okay?
Sure.
That's something that was marketed to me. I used to be one of the apologists for men, right? What number one, because I was super jealous of like the bad boys that I would always date, like the hottest girl like in high school or in college that I really wanted to be with. And so I would be like, I'm so sorry for my species. Right. Like I was that guy. And that was my road to try and date was like
Good
be
luck
an
with that.
apologist. Right. And and I thought about that and I was just like, okay, men are toxic. Cool. Masculinity is toxic. Well, is it masculinity or is it unconsciousness? Right? Is it when you're not aware of or responsible for, what you are? And the thing is, everybody wants to have a claim and a copyright on truth. The body knows, right? The body knows what's true. And for me, on my journey, what I found was that when I connected to God, number one, right? I connected to my higher power. I was looking at the question of purpose. Well, what the fuck is the purpose? Because society will have you believe that men are like purposeless or needless. Like we don't need you, right? We can do bad all by ourselves. Let's look at that for a second. That's a fucking wounded perspective because then you go around and complain that you're fucking lonely and single and you can't find a good man and all the men that you find are pussies who wouldn't fucking protect you from your mother-in-law,
Yep.
right? Like okay, so not don't get me started on that. But I connected to my higher power, right? And then I looked at purpose and I was like, well, what is the purpose of me? I am a man. What is something that feels true for me? Okay, protect. Got it. If Do a quick thought experiment, right? Like let's say you're dating a girl and some dude starts getting loud in her face. Some snooty waiter, some asshole, right? Do you feel anything? You, not a trick question, but you, Ray. Like, do you feel anything?
Yeah.
Right? If anybody were to talk to your girls and get a tone,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
right? I have this. There's an electricity that goes up the base of my spine from my fucking ball sack, and I'm just like, I'm on.
Yep.
Okay. Quick. That's your masculine instinct. That's something that
Could
was
be.
there before I started thinking about the shit.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
Guess
think it
what?
just happened.
It feels good.
Yeah, it does. And then I think 1 minute later, if you go much farther, buddy, you better watch it.
Right? And here's the thing. That's natural. Now, obviously, and we had a good conversation about this quickly, which is that unconscious toxic men did create feminism. We didn't let women vote until 50 years ago, right? So let's not act like we have all the answers and that we got it right all the time. Okay. We also, like, men created sex trafficking. You know what I mean? Men created slavery. So there's this egoic separation. There's this unconsciousness. There's this way of being that, people have conflated masculinity with.
Great.
But the true definition of masculinity is safety. It is being strong enough to create safety. When you think about your girls and you think about that instinct, you think about, hold on a second, someone is talking hot to, a loved one, women, children, or even my boy, right? Or my friend. I have this instinct in me that I didn't create. My parents didn't create, right? Like, it's in me.
Yep.
In me is what I am. And so there's something there that is natural. And then there's I'm going to tell you a quick story. Olivia, wifey, right?
Yep.
She is not very vulnerable, right? She was abandoned by both her bio dad and her adoptive dad, her stepfather. She has a lot of pain and a lot of fear around men and trusting me. So we spent a good 10 years on this. Okay. Is it possible that the angriest of feminists were little girls who were let down by men who refused or didn't know how to do their jobs? That's where compassion and empathy come in, and understand that toxic femininity, because not femininity, but feminism, the idea that we have to overcompensate, the idea that we have to subjugate men and put them in their place and get them to gaslight them into thinking that they're toxic, they're wrong, that their fierceness is bad. What are you going to do? You're going to create a bunch of weak men who are disconnected and dissociated, so they can't leverage that fierceness to fucking protect you. Right? So you have generations now, multiple generations of men who are like, my woman is calling me a bitch. She's sleeping with the entire neighborhood. And I try to tell her to stop. And she tells me that she doesn't know why she does it. It's actually a trauma response. But because I've been taught I can't put my foot down, I just either have to take it or divorce her. And then I victimize myself. And now I'm walking around being like, bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. Right? So anyways, I digress. My point was back to protecting and providing, for example. Those things feel natural.
100%.
Olivia was crying to me one time. She was talking to me. This is very, very sensitive. She was like, I've had enough of being overweight. She was crying her eyes out. That she was being very, very vulnerable. We have this joke that she's always like, why are you always so horny when I cry? Right? It's because you're vulnerable. And like, I want to protect you. And I feel like a man. Not the point. Point is, she's weeping and she's like, I've had enough of this. And I had a little bit of money in the bank, and I had my buddy, shout out to Mogias from Training with the Titans, and he had this offer, right, for us, and we didn't have enough money. But when I allowed myself to feel how my woman's pain was affecting me,
yep,
I needed to do two things that felt natural to me. I needed to protect her, and I needed to provide. You better believe I upsold the shit out of the clients that I had. I found, right, the money needed to make that investment. Then we got a trainer the next day. The power that women have to inspire the best in men.
I agree.
Power that men have to inspire the best in women,
which is done through leadership,
right? It's done through leadership, and it's played in an arena that is beyond this cultural conditioning. It's natural. That's why I love the concept of polarity, right? Polarity of like the opposing magnets. You have a positive and a negative charge. The idea that opposites attract. The more masculine a man ends up being, the more he ends up attracting like femininity into his life, and vice versa. And what happens when you do that in relationship, right? You end up getting your woman to feel what? Safe.
That's what it's all about. Even with what you just said, protecting and providing, it all falls under safety. You know what I mean?
So what happens when you as a man are able to connect to this, right? When you're able to connect to these things and you have a blue-haired angry feminist coming at you,
Yeah.
guess what you can now do? You can now hold space for her pain. You can, just like Christ, you see beyond her angry words, beyond the keyboard warrior. You see, you know what? There's a high chance there was a little girl who was let down by a man who
Damaged
was
or whatever.
supposed
Yeah.
to do his fucking job.
Yep, that's certainly likely. I mean, 100%. Just because I got a hard stop here in 4 minutes, but I mean, this conversation we could have booked double the time and kept going. But my kind
Do it
of take
again.
on, yeah, we definitely should. My kind of take on, with masculinity, feminism, toxic, with that word gets thrown in both of them, right in front of both of them, toxic masculine. But I think there's extremes of both. I think modern feminism in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, for the most part, I agreed with most of that. I think where it's gone today is more toward the extreme. Is more, I think a lot of the top, I just think the more modern it's come, the more extreme. Like, for instance, I fully agree with women being able to vote, work and be CEOs, run their own bit, like all that stuff. They should have the ability, but there isn't equality. We're not the same. They're not gonna, for instance, so the argument of like, WNBA players should make the same as the NBA. It all comes down to economics. If they brought in that much money, right? And I don't hear that argument from females. They're like, well, it's not fair. They should pay us as much. Well, how come I don't hear that in the bricklayers union or the guys who run the shingles up the ladders? Like women aren't asking for equality in that. So there is certain differences, right? I think masculinity is needed, is healthy, and makes a great relationship. There could also be an extreme where it becomes toxic, right? So I think there's both ends of that spectrum, and that could be a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I'll give you one last thought. But just again, before I wrap up here and kick it back to Richard for a final thought, if anybody wanted his guide and training on how to master your emotions so you can become a better leader for your wife and in your relationship, and ultimately for yourself as well, and thrive in all aspects, again, just the description will be, the link will be in the description there on YouTube. And if you're watching here on the Facebook Live, just drop a comment below, saying guide or training, and we will send that on over to you. But yeah, Richard, any last 2-minute wrap up here?
Yeah, what you said was very powerful. I mean, Bill Burr has a wonderful bit about the WNBA.
I think I've seen that actually.
Dude, I love that one so much. Bill Burr is a prophet. But
I think I've seen that one.
To your point, there is king energy and there's tyrant energy. What you're aware of, you control. What you're unaware of controls you. Masculinity is a fire. If you take nothing away from this, anybody who watches this, masculinity is a fire. It can burn your house down, or it can keep your family warm and cook a steak. It's in the wielder. And we have a sacred responsibility to not only embody it, to champion it, and to serve the world from that energy. Be it business, be it relationship, bricklaying, right? It's in the next conversation that you have.
100%. That's
Because
awesome,
men
man.
are deeply loving.
That's awesome. No. That's great. That's great. Actually, when you said that, like the fire thing, reminds me of something you might have heard Jordan Peterson say this, but he's like, people say men are monsters, and there's a monster in all of us. What I recommend every man do is let that monster run wild in his late teens and early 20s, and then learn how to control that. And that's when they really become dangerous. So I think there's a lot of similarities to what you were just saying that kind of brought me back to that phrase. And I was like, most people won't tell men to do that, but that's actually right. When you got to realize your limits, your capabilities, and then set boundaries and know, when is too far and when is healthy. And without ever testing the boundaries, how are you going to know?
Yeah.
Great conversation, man. We are definitely going to do this some more because I had topics I never even got into. But as
man, I'm in for four more of these. Okay.
Okay. We'll book a monthly series. No. All right. I'll get with you a little later, Richard. Thank everybody for watching. If you need anything from Richard, in the description, also on YouTube, I'll have linked over to his profile so you can connect with him, follow him, check out his content. And we'll be talking soon, my friend.
All right, brother. Thanks
For
everybody.
jumping on, buddy. I appreciate you. Bye-bye.